Hello everyone, so this is going to be quite a quick discussion video judging from recent events, and whilst I'm working on the next big video review, which I do plan on releasing later next month, these kinds of videos should bridge the gap fairly well. And yes, I'm playing a bit of Foam Stars. I suck at it, but it's a very fun game, even though I feel like it's going to take a lot of effort to make it successful. Earlier this year I made a video talking about the live service bubble and how it seemed to have been bursting with a whole slew of games being shut down because of a lack of player interest and the failure to make a positive return of investment with how oversaturated live services are. Even recent releases like Suicide Squad and Skull and Bones got eviscerated for their heavy always online focus, not making up for the lackluster gameplay both of those games offered. Well, since then, Skull and Bones got indefinitely delayed yet again, and Suicide Squad, well... I'm pretty sure when Suicide Squad does release, there's just a much better game releasing on the same day. Easy choice there, there's no indecisiveness or anything like that. You can even pet the dog. We've seen more games end up terminating their own live service support, like Vampire the Masquerade Blood Hunt, which ended up populating matches with the bots to make up for the lack of a player base, and it became incredibly obvious by then, to games that died down in popularity just only to say, oh, this was the beta, we're going to come back stronger than ever with a full release, looking at you Multiversus. And we have games that are shutting down after just barely around a year in service, like Gundam Evolution. The concepts behind some of those games were cool, and I even had a fun time playing them, but with how oversaturated the live service genre is, I can't help but feel that publishers are just cutting their losses and dipping out of the gig that rather than sink more money into games that just don't have the player base to justify their existence. Thursday's news was very unprecedented, and for good reason. I was just browsing on Twitter on the way to work when I found that out of the blue, Sega decided to pull the plug on one of their live service releases even before it came out, and that game is Hyenas. They also ended development of two of the other games from European studios which were unannounced, but let's talk about Hyenas because that game's cancellation is a big turning point for the state of live service games being sought after by publishers. So Hyenas was this live service shooter that Sega was mentioning throughout its financial reports, talking about how it was one of their most expensive projects leading up to one of their long-term goals in what they called the Super Game. Hyenas was also supposed to be the game that was leading up to this ambitious project, so they were trying with the goal to fill Sega's void in the live service genre. Creative Assembly, having already released games such as the excellent Alien Isolation and Halo Wars 2 afterwards, this game was being developed by their console development unit, who were aiming for Hyenas to be one of their biggest games yet. And I'm not going to lie, I've tried the game before. Hyenas' concept sounded really awesome. This was a first-person extraction shooter combining elements from games like Payday, but with the added bonus of having some really good zero-gravity mechanics. You could manipulate gravity by moving around seamlessly to areas where you couldn't conventionally get to, and I loved how they gave the Sega Mega Drive, or Genesis if you live in America, and Sonic the Hedgehog a nice homage when it came to plunder and looting game. After you plundered your loot, you have to survive waves of NPCs called Murphs before being able to extract the loot that you stole. I enjoyed the gunplay, as feeling like it had some nice sense of weight, force, and how satisfying it was to shoot at Murphs. But I did feel that the need to constantly look for health and armor whilst you were trying to extract your loot was a bit of an issue. And it wasn't a bad game by any means, but there was some cool ideas that CA had cooked up, but more importantly, it was very difficult to see how Hyenas was going to fare in the market that would have been heavily oversaturated. And man, the hype for Hyenas had been essentially non-existent. YouTube comments were slating the game for chasing a trend that was not only oversaturated, but one that already came and went, the hero shooter. And here's some of the responses towards one of Hyenas' most recent gameplay trailers. Oh yay, another hero shooter. We definitely need more of those. This is going to be such a hit when it releases in 2016. This looks like literally everything that was wrong with gaming. Pumping your resources into chasing a trend while seemingly abandoning your core customer base is definitely one direction to go in. I think this definitely gives me the impression that Hyenas already had those aspects of a game that was too little, too late to market, considering that this game would have already began development straight after Halo Wars 2 in 2017, so that's like 6 years, when live service games began to become a more attractive business model for publishers to implement, and releasing at a time when the genre is not only oversaturated, but is looked upon in such a negative light with how publishers are trying to have their Fortnite moment. That time has passed. It's almost borderline impossible now for many developers to break out into the live service scene, because at the end of the day, you're competing for players' time and money, and when most of them will look to the most established games, like Fortnite, Warzone, Genshin Impact, etc., you're just going to get the scraps. And it also explains why people are fed up with those games constantly being there to chase a trend that's already run away from them. What makes this case extremely unique from the rest of the games that I covered with my previous video is the fact that Sega decided to cancel this game so close to release. They had a Gamescom booth where you could try out the game, they unveiled some new heroes, and they were even continuing to post on their social media in the lead up to cancellation. Even then, Sega themselves were saying that they were struggling to find a business model that would work for Hyenas. They even said that it was challenging. And fast forward to Thursday, when Sega mentioned that they were not only going to cancel Hyenas, but 2 unannounced games from the European studios. My guess was that Sega was going to already record a loss, which they did, and they needed to trim some fat, so they realised that a live service game that was being made for 6 years, being released in a market that is cutthroat for new games to even compete, wouldn't have been the best investment. There was also the lack of interest in the lead up to the planned release. If you check SteamDB, Hyenas closed beta only managed to peak at 2,261 players, and I'd assume that the game's player base would have evaporated by then. So if they were just to release that, it wouldn't have been a good return of investment for Sega either way. Releasing a game like this at the wrong time, even on social media, there was absolutely no buzz as time went by. The most recent video on their YouTube channel only has 2,200 views. For a live service game, that is terrible. That is legitimately not a good sign. And the game's costs are being treated as a tax write-off. The worst part of this though, is that people have lost their jobs as a result of the game being cancelled. If the live service bubble was already bursting earlier this year with the lack of interest, and tons of games having their servers shut down after only even a year in service, then it has certainly burst. It's now almost impossible to break out in an oversaturated genre. There's always a bigger level of disinterest whenever you hear the term live service, and even for games that have been delayed several times that have leaned on a heavy online focus, the hype has almost completely evaporated into dust. Not only that, but releasing an always online game even today is a huge gamble that doesn't always end well. Payday 3 recently, our game was fun, but it unfortunately released with some of the most busted matchmaking pretty recently. And it's that bad to the point where Starbreeze is now considering removing the requirement. How hard is it to at least preserve aspects of your game when it inevitably goes offline? This also kind of leans onto what I was going to say about what Sony was doing with their live service titles. I don't like their approach to churning out like 10 of those games, especially when 2 of them were revealed with like absolutely no gameplay whatsoever and didn't really feel unique. But at least they are starting to become self-aware that not all of them will do well. Maybe at some point there will be a realization that trying to chase the live service trend isn't always worth the time or money. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like, comment or subscribe to the channel. It's really appreciated. And if you want more updates on future videos, please follow my Twitter or join my Discord. Thank you so much for watching my video, and I'll see you in the next one.